I'm delighted to welcome you here tonight to our Downtown Futures Forum. As you know, this is the first in a series of forums that are designed to engage our community and our business stakeholders and solicit your invaluable input in developing a future vision for our downtown. The results of these forums are going to provide the city and the council with guidance as we seek to update our downtown area plan. I want to say I'm so thrilled to see so many people here, and I know how busy all of you are and how difficult it is to find time in your schedule just for personal time. So on behalf of the council, I want to thank you for caring about San Mateo's future and for taking time to participate and share your thoughts. San Mateo is truly fortunate to have so many engaged and active members of our community. I was born and raised in San Mateo and have spent a lifetime watching San Mateo grow and change. As a child growing up, I saw our downtown thrive. Then as a young adult, I saw it start to decline with the arrival of major shopping centers as competition. But in the last 15 years, I've really seen our downtown go through a renaissance. And it once again has returned to a thriving, bustling downtown. And it really thrills me to see the vitality and energy and renewal in all areas of our city, but especially our downtown, which is a go-to destination for dining and unquestionably one of the best places and most desirable places to live and work in the Bay Area. Change is necessary to thrive and foster the vitality of any community. And San Mateo did not become the wonderful city it is today without continuous change. It is the one thing that is constant and predictable. But change should not happen in a vacuum. We have to be very deliberate in how we plan for our future. And a pillar of any planning process must be the preservation of the heart and character of San Mateo that make it such a desirable place to live, to work, and to raise a family. That planning process is going to require balancing the economic and development needs of our downtown with the needs of our community. That includes looking at traffic, parking, and the strain on our infrastructure. So these forums are going to help us achieve that critical balance. They're designed to inform, to engage, to encourage interaction and feedback. They will help us think outside the box, help us look at opportunities and challenges, and develop ideas and recommendations to help create a vision for our downtown, one that will help our downtown continue to grow, to thrive, and remain sustainable both now and into the future. I'm really proud San Mateo is a city that genuinely listens to its citizens and values their input, and I really look forward to hearing all of your feedback tonight and in future forums. So thank you again for being here, and I will turn it back over to Marcus.
What's really nice about this format is that we're all here to learn, and we have time for questions and answers after the keynote, after the panel discussion, and then at the very end, all of our guests are going to go to a corner and have information about where they come from so we can engage with them one-on-one. So you don't have to get all your questions in during the Q&A, but be here to engage with them. And actually, this is an overall process, which I'll talk about in a moment, which is always open for your feedback. So this is just the beginning of an overall layout and framework to get your guys' input. So lastly, just want to thank all of you for being here. This is such a big deal for us. It's our first one. We sold out. We had to kick people out, hopefully not too many, but we're just so excited to have you all here today. Why are we here? Well, as you know, and I think it's why everyone is here tonight, things are changing in the area drastically, quickly, and really interestingly. So we're here because we want to get a head start on what's going on, what changes are happening, and how cities are adapting to those changes. There's a lot of different ways cities choose to react to changes or to get ahead of this steps. And so we're going to learn so much from our partners here tonight on how they're dealing with these changes. And that speaks to the best practices. San Bruno, San Leandro, Redwood City, and Stephen is an expert in all this whole region and beyond. So we're able to really learn about these changes that are happening and how people are adapting. When you think, like our mayor was speaking about, downtown looked a lot different 15 years ago. It looked different 5 years ago, and it'll look different 10 years from now. So just really excited to find out what those changes are from a research perspective and then what cities are doing. This is, you can't really see it that well, but just to let you know, this is an overall framework that started in September with the Commissioner Summit that's kicked off and said, what do we want our downtown to be? And so this whole process of community engagement leads into our downtown area plan that will be led by planning this next fiscal year, which starts in a couple months. And we really want to have everyone's voices here. We've already had a couple pop-ups. One was at the Caltrain station at the holiday fair. The other one was just the other day in Central Park. We're really trying to get everyone's voices as part of this process. Even our future generation. So they were out there too and they gave their ideas. So planning, if you can see, there's a whole new color scheme for our Caltrain station. So be ready for that. So really working hard to get all voices involved. A lot of different things have come up through this process already. You know, some of the things you have heard around downtown being more walkable with our sustainable streets plan. Traffic is an issue, as we all know. How do we deal with that? With parking and other things. How do we make it consider more housing, consider different types of housing, just considering different kinds of retail. As you know, we all love to say we like to support our local retail, but unfortunately a lot of people are actually going to our retail locations, taking a picture of the the barcode and then ordering it off of Amazon. So we can't really support our downtown retail by that, but how are there other ways that we can be doing it? So many things to think about and talk about. And so to get in the meat and potatoes of tonight, we're going to start with Stephen Levy with the Center for Continuing Studies of California Economy. I think I deserve a PhD for being able to remember that. And it's funny because, you know, Steve, a lot of people came here just to see Steve. And so I'm really excited to hear, yes, it's true. So really excited to hear what you have to say. And then,
okay, I need a favor. We would kill for an audience like this in Palo Alto. So, when all the panelists are done, before you get more food or go to the groups, I'm going to ask you to stay still so I can take some major embarrassment pictures. Thank you. I'm a neighbor in downtown. I live and work in Palo Alto. Nancy and I have lived downtown for 10 years. I've been in Palo Alto for 50 years. So San Mateo, River City, San Bruno, Mountain View, San Leandro to the east, we all share the changes you just heard about and the completely precious nature of downtowns to address what are the challenges of growth, the regional housing cost and availability, the transportation congestion and parking challenges. So we have the goodies and we have the stuff that drives residents, maybe some of you, absolutely nuts. There's no question that prosperity has brought challenges. I'm not going to read all the words. The PowerPoint will be left, all of the boring numbers and some of the words, so you can read it a little bit later. In my city, and I suspect here, there are a lot of businesses who are or have moved downtown because that's a place where they can attract workers. Whether the people live nearby, whether the people come in on Caltrain, whether the workers want to be here because downtown San Mateo is a great place to do other things besides just work. So you have business demand up and down the peninsula for wanting to locate in rocking downtown. Nancy and I live downtown. I do work downtown, but we live downtown. The car never leaves the garage. We walk to absolutely everything. We're near services and shopping and the train, which I took up here. We love living downtown. We live in a 17-unit condo Nancy and I are a single-family home. When the kids moved out, we downsized, but we didn't want to leave. So we were lucky to find a place downtown. I don't know the specifics of San Mateo, but our generation wanting to stay where we are, but not in the big single-family house, is a huge part of housing demand for downtown. On the other hand, I've just met a whole bunch of friends who are young, in their 30s, a couple of kids, wife or a husband or a partner. They want to be downtown because these downtowns are exciting for them. San Francisco ain't the only place that has good downtowns. And then you have the businesses that want to be downtown because they want to serve the residents and the workers. And San Mateo, like Palo Alto, is going to go through this changing nature of retail and what kind of restaurants or businesses or services want to be downtown even if you fill them up with customers. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Caltrain serves downtown. San Mateo ridership is rocking. Palo Alto ridership is double or triple rocking because people want to be able, if they can, to take a train and get from home to work or mostly from work to home. That makes downtown business space really attractive to folks. Don't bother to look at it. The bottom line is from Market Street in San Francisco to Market Street in San Jose, you're in the middle of it. Job growth here is just dramatically outpacing the nation. It will continue. It won't be quite as sharply upward as it's been as baby boomers begin to retirement, but there's absolutely no question that San Mateo and San Leandro and San Bruno and Redwood City and Palo Alto are in the heart of a place where folks like Google and Apple and Facebook and LinkedIn and others want to grow, are growing, are hiring people, are making goods and services that have millions and millions of customers around the world. And that's not likely to stop unless we make it stop by not building enough housing, not solving the transportation. We're in the middle of this boom. And we have a failure. It's not anybody's particular failure. On one count, we're underbuilt by 75,000 housing units. That's through a couple of years ago. It's more now. It's worse. I don't know whether some of you rent, but rents have gone up enormously faster than incomes as of housing prices. So we have this issue of how can we keep this regional economy going and be able to attract people and be able to allow folks like our kids and grandkids to live here if we don't work on housing. The good and bad news is that a whole lot of the housing is appropriate for because people want to live there in downtown. So that'll be a choice for San Mateo like it's a choice for Palo Alto and all of the cities there. And I'll be interested to hear how these cities are handling the fact that probably from a technical economist point of view, looking at the region, downtowns are where you want a lot of housing. It is a major, major problem. That just says, the reason it's going to get worse is we've had a benefit for 3 or 4 years that a lot of the people that held those jobs were unemployed, but they were already living here and they had a house. We have really low unemployment now. The next surge of job growth is going to bring people in. It's not going to go away. Okay. One of the hardest things, particularly for an audience that looks kind of closer to my age than the panelist age, is to grasp that planning is really not for us next year. Planning is for 10 years out or 15 years out. And in that period, this is what the profile of population growth is going to be in your county and in my county. And it is the movement of the baby boomers to 55, to 65, and to 75. There'll be new people coming in younger age groups, but they'll be matched by the people graduating to becoming older. And so we're moving from a time when it was single family land, when the bulk of people were 35 to 55, when there was space to build single family homes when those families had kids, to a time when there probably won't be any more kids on the peninsula in 2030 than there are now. There might even be fewer. And where the bulk of the increase will be in older age groups. So what are their preferences? Will people want to stay in their single family homes? Will they want, as Nancy and I did, to be able to stay in Palo Alto but move downtown and kind of ditch the car for a while? What will their retail preferences be? But the demographics are just completely dynamic. I mean, that's where the growth is going to be. Okay. So all of our downtowns are sitting in this red hot economy that's going to remain pretty strong, that's produced housing challenges of cost and affordability. That's, I don't know about San Mateo, but in Palo Alto we have parking overflows in the neighborhood, we have traffic congestion. It goes with the growth. It's the good and the bad. And unless we do something about that, that's going to continue. So where do downtowns fit into addressing housing and transportation? And that'll be one of the things you all can work out. I have to tell you that going forward, stopping growth won't solve those challenges. The amount of growth that's going to go between now and the next 5 or 6 years is small in relation to the housing and transportation challenges. My city gets wrapped up in that. They think if they stop it, it'll solve the problem. The only way to solve the problem is to build more housing to help people get out of cars. Maybe you need more parking. That'll be something that all cities deal with. I've said this already. In my downtown, you could sell any unit you built for a couple like Nancy and me, any unit you built for a young couple willing to live in a 1,000 to 1,500 square foot place with their kids next to schools and libraries and parks. The only thing stopping that building is some zoning that's not appropriate and some residents that don't want it. It's each city's challenge, but that's where a lot of people want to live, because if you're going to live on the peninsula and you're new, there aren't going to be very many more single family homes, if any. People want to live here, they're going to live in denser, taller units. I like it, some people don't like it, but it is your future choice. In my city, and we're almost done, there is a lot of nostalgia. As we've heard, there's change. There's stores that aren't here anymore. Some went out of business, some may have been converted because the owners found more profitable uses for the land, but many of them have disappeared. And I'll tell you my anecdote. My wife got this wonderful blue-gray sweater, and she wanted me to have one, and she wanted me to have one, and finally I gave in, and we went to the store, and they didn't have any. But the clerk said, you know, you go home, you go online, you find the model, you click on it, Amazon delivers it in a day and a half. I asked my young friends, do they shop in stores? They don't. They're busy, they order online. It is a huge piece of the future, so every city has to puzzle out what kind of retail increasingly serves the workers, because they're down there every day. If I worked in San Francisco, I would do banking in San Francisco. I might have a dentist in San Francisco. I do all sorts of things in San Francisco that I do in Palo Alto, not because I live there, but because I work there. And second, how does that retail environment change for you if you build a lot of housing? Okay. But I don't think, at least from the experts, and I'm not one, that I've met, you can bring back the retail patterns of 1980s or 1990s or even 2000. The internet world That's just changed what we can do. Finally, I don't know the specifics. I'll be interested to hear what other folks do. As downtowns become really, really popular, as I suspect San Mateo's is becoming, you have to handle parking. You have to see, we have companies in downtown Palo Alto where only 30% of the people drive. They give them Caltrain passes. They give them, now you can get a Lyft ride. You can take Caltrain. You can get a Lyft or an Uber and something there. There are all sorts of new ways to handle this. We have applications on your smartphone that tell you where the parking places are. There's all sorts of parking and transportation innovations that we're going to have to bring to bear, even if there weren't more growth, to handle the parking and transportation challenges of a downtown area. And finally, if you're doing like we're doing and thinking about 2020 or 2025, not 2016, it's good to remember how much change there's going to be in the next 10 years. Think back 15 years. I couldn't order my tickets online. I actually went to a bank occasionally and stood in line. When I called for customer service, I wasn't told to press 1 and pray that somebody would answer within the next hour or two. It's different. There were no Amazon packages delivered to the house. So think about the changes that are likely to come and how we can make those changes incorporated into the best downtown San Mateo that you can make. And again, remember, when all the panelists are done, please sit still so I can embarrass my friends in Palo Alto. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is David Woltering. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of San Bruno. I'm really pleased to be here this evening to talk to you about public engagement in downtown planning and to share with all of you some of our experiences in downtown planning in San Bruno. And to start off with, though, I'd like to talk a little bit about the socio-economic and physical landscape of San Bruno. We're about 43,000 in population currently. The 2010 census was 41,000. We're projected to increase population by 2030 by about 10,000, about a 24% increase. So population increase, pretty substantial, 24%, by 2030. Also, kind of looking at the population itself in San Bruno, very diverse population. We've got strong ethnic diversity. We've got about 25% Asian population, 29% Hispanic, for example. In terms of age groups, we've got a large population under 19 years of age. About 23% of our population currently is under 19 years of age. Over 60, about 20% of our population is over 60. As far as the economics of San Bruno, like mentioned by the keynote speaker, we're experiencing a number of tech companies coming into San Bruno. For example, YouTube, as mentioned earlier. YouTube is expanding considerably. We've been working in our community development department with YouTube on a number of expansions. They've added 1,100 employees in San Bruno just in the last year. Walmart.com has added about 600 employees just in the last 6 months. So we're seeing a tech expansion, population expansion, and then what about physical landscape? San Bruno has a terrific physical landscape in terms of transportation. We have a BART station. We have a brand new Caltrain station. We have US 101, SFO Airport. We have Highway 380, Highway 280. So transportation amenities are right there. So as we look at our community and think about our downtown planning, that gives you a little bit of base information to move forward with. Over the last 4 or 5 years, San Bruno worked on developing a downtown plan. This downtown plan is referred to as the San Bruno Transit Corridors Plan. It covers about 155 acres of area. It includes our major downtown streets, San Mateo Avenue. It includes San Bruno Avenue, El Camino Real, Huntington Avenue, and is within a half-a-mile radius of our 2 transit stations, BART and Caltrain. Thinking about historical land influences, land use influences, as you move forward to develop your plan, what's the context? In San Bruno, we've got rail, as I've mentioned, El Camino Real, we've got SFO, and then we've got Ordinance 1284. Ordinance 1284 was adopted in 1977. This ordinance was a reaction to a fair amount of growth going on at that time and concern about too much growth. And so the idea was the population at that time put this ordinance in place to restrict growth. But it had a very limiting influence in terms of investment in our community, investment in our downtown. Ordinance 1284 restricted density to 1974 levels, precluded above-ground parking garages, and didn't allow buildings to be higher than 3 stories or 50 feet. What about the downtown? What does the downtown look like? What are the existing conditions? We have a number of vacant buildings, long vacant buildings in our downtown. We have some buildings that are poorly designed, nondescript, low investment in many areas. We do have those, some buildings that have historic importance, and we would like to incorporate those in our planning effort as we move forward. So as we look at our downtown and kind of overall conditions and constraints, we've got a changed market. We had Tanforan Regional Shopping Mall go in. Took a lot of life out of our downtown. Lack of investment in our downtown. Physical conditions I pointed out in the slides. Underutilization, many parcels underutilized. Could see more development potential. City restrictions, Ordinance 1284 I mentioned, and a zoning code that hasn't been updated since 1982. Our parking standards are excessive. We don't really allow for mixed-use development, which we'd like to see more of in the current zoning code. So we embarked, San Bruno embarked on its own visioning process, as much as you're doing now with your downtown area plan. We needed to reach out, we needed to find out, what does the community want? What does the community envision its downtown and community to be? We had a number of workshops. We created a steering committee, a 17-member steering committee made up of council members, commissioners, key property owners, and even the youth. We analyzed the area. We analyzed the 155-acre area that I described. We looked at where could there be plazas? Where should retail be located? What about mixed use? What about residential? What about office? We identified 5 key character areas in the downtown, each one unique in terms of the land uses, the design requirements that would be appropriate for those areas, and we developed design guidelines and development standards for each one of those areas. So what was the overall vision? We reached out over several years, community workshops, city council, planning commission meetings, a steering committee, and what was the vision that came forward? The vision basically is this: creating a downtown that is day and night. In other words, we bring housing to the downtown. It's a 24-hour place. There are people that live there, work there, recreate there, shop there. We wanted to maintain local character and distinctive identity. I pointed out how that one building has some really interesting architecture. Buildings like that we want to maintain and incorporate as we move forward. We've got transit. We've got Caltrain and BART right in our downtown. We want to make sure that we take advantage of those transit opportunities. We have nearby bus lines. We want to have economic vitality in our downtown. How can we do that? It's going to be important in San Bruno, probably in your community as well, to make sure that as you move forward with your planning effort, you're thinking about economic incentives for the development community, for property owners, real economic development opportunities for them to incentivize development in your area. It needs to be sustainable. We encourage mixed use, particularly in our area where we have transit opportunities. We want to make sure that people can come in and go to work, come in and live in our community. We want a mix of land uses. We want it to be safe and inviting. We want to create a very active and safe pedestrian realm. We want basically a vibrant transit village in downtown San Bruno. So what do we have? This is a picture that kind of shows existing conditions in our downtown on San Bruno Avenue. So this is kind of an existing condition. But what could it be? This is what we have, but what could it be given the public engagement, the public outreach we've done, the visioning we've done, the development standards, design guidelines that we put together in our transit corridors plan? What could this street look like? And this is what it could look like. So we had photo simulations prepared to try to give people an understanding of if this plan is envisioned and realized as laid out, what could our downtown look like? You see the attractive landscape treatments. You see the pedestrian-friendly sidewalks. You see the offsets and step backs. And the really inviting realm and environment that's created. Here's another location, near our new Caltrain station. Pretty bleak, isn't it? But again, this is what we have today. But with the downtown plan, with the San Bruno Transit Corridors Plan, the development standards, the design guidelines, the incentives that are built in to that plan, what could this area be? And again, we had a photo simulation prepared, and this is what it could be. Again, you see the step backs, the building step backs. You see the active streets, the attractive architectural treatments, the signage. This is the sort of area that we want to create, and we believe our plan will help us do that. But it was through public engagement, community outreach, reaching out to the public, involving the public and finding out what they were looking for that we were able to put together this plan. So to give you an idea of, well, what are the development standards, or an example of development standards in this plan? Well, for one thing, I mentioned earlier that Ordinance 1284 limited building height to 3 stories or 50 feet. And we found that from the development community standpoint and private property owner standpoint, that was a limiting factor in terms of investment and redevelopment of underutilized properties. So for example, here on El Camino Real, the building height has been increased to 5 stories and 70 feet. And at the same time though, we want to make sure that we're sensitive to other property owners. So there would be step backs, building step backs and offsets, and setbacks to create more interest architecturally and also separation between properties. We also put in a floor area ratio, graduated floor area ratio, FAR requirement, that actually if you assemble properties and you get 20,000 square feet of land together, the FAR limitation of 2.0, floor area limitation of 2.0, goes away. So again, we tried to build in incentives, increase building heights, relaxing the floor area ratio, relax parking standards. Again, the attempt here is to provide real economic incentives for private property owners and developers to come in and develop and redevelop properties in accordance with the development standards and design guidelines, and to create the sort of environment that we showed in the photo simulations. As we did this though, as we talked to neighbors and got their feedback, what we heard from some neighbors was, you know, as you increase building heights, we live nearby. We want to make sure that as you do that, we have input and we have protections. So within the plan, and again, this is why public engagement, public involvement is so important, to listen, to adjust. And so as we went through our process, we did listen, we did adjust. For proposed development projects that are on properties of 20,000 square feet or greater, there's an extra process that developers need to go through that requires more engagement of the public, stricter guidelines, stricter public review. And by doing this, we've provided some protections for nearby property owners. Also, we've indicated that in terms of residential properties will only be acquired from willing sellers, no eminent domain. So what's been achieved? The Transit Corridors Plan was adopted in 2013. We had significant community participation and input. Last year in November, I mentioned 1284, Ordinance 1284. That was put in place by the people, so we had to go out with a ballot measure to have those restrictions altered, adjusted, relaxed. We went out to the public in San Bruno with Measure N, and it was adopted overwhelmingly by 66%. So now, building heights in the transit corridors plan area can be higher. We can have attractively designed above-ground parking garages, and residential densities can be increased. All real incentives for economic development and redevelopment in this area. Presently, we're forming an implementation committee to further implement various aspects of the downtown plan, the transit corridors plan. We needed the private sector, we need the private sector to make this happen, and the incentives are important for that. We have a first project, and the first project that's gone through our process is called the Plaza. Given the fact that we had done a full environmental impact report on our plan, we were able to take this project, this proposed project, that's about 6,975 square feet of commercial space on ground floor at the southern end of San Mateo Avenue near El Camino Real. And we would have that commercial space on ground floor and 83 units above, a mixed-use project. And this project will be in place of, will redevelop the site that's known as the El Camino Cinema site. That El Camino Cinema site has been abandoned for 10 or more years. So this is a tremendous new development opportunity for San Bruno and its Southern Gateway. And why did this come about? This came about because the developers were interested because they could achieve higher density, there was a reduced parking requirement, the design guidelines gave them some certainty, and we were able to process this project in 6 months. So the benefits of the overall plan: to stimulate economic activity, revitalize aging and obsolete buildings, attract new restaurants, shops, offices, and housing, improve walkability, generate new revenues for the city. Our next steps: we're doing a zoning code update. We have the implementation working committee that we're developing at this point, putting together. We're developing financing strategy and impact fees. We're prioritizing and installing infrastructure improvements, and we're working with property owners on a regular basis to tell them more about this plan for implementation. Lessons learned: it is very important to have champions. It's very important to have city council members, planning commissioners, people in your community that are champions of your project. It's important as you're doing your environmental, your CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, to make sure that you're thinking ahead so that, as we did with the Plaza project, you can offer another incentive to the development community that essentially your CEQA, your environmental review, has been done for the most part, and that the time frame for processing subsequent projects can be reduced. Public participation is key, and it's important as you have a steering committee, it's also important to have an implementation committee so that once you have your plan in place, you're ready to implement. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
I'd love to assume that everybody here knows San Leandro well, but that probably isn't true, so I'll give you just a 1 minute overview. We're on the other side of the bay between Oakland and Hayward, city of about 87,000 people. So largely residential, but also largely industrial. 23% of our city is zoned for industry, and that's another topic for another session, but that's been a hugely interesting thing to work on over the last few years as manufacturing comes back in a different way in the US. We've got regional retail centers, so that's part of my work as business development manager, is an auto mall and shopping centers and shopping malls, which generate a lot of attention for us and certainly revenue. It helps me have lots of neighboring communities, Oakland in particular, that are underserved by retail and come to shop in San Leandro. That's great for the city, and then often goes to regional retail centers. Nevertheless, the downtown is hugely important. And that's not really a dollars and cents thing, first and foremost. That plays in to some degree. But it's the historic core of the city, like so many of the other cities through the Bay Area. the identity of the community is really tied to downtown in many ways, and having a healthy downtown is critically important. And we're seeing huge forces of change right now that impact how downtowns do well and sometimes don't do well. So that's been a major point of emphasis for my work and for the city in general. A few trends we're seeing. The first few are really about short-term economic cycles. Everybody knows we're in a real nice boom cycle right now. We had more vacancy than we would have liked a few years ago. That's really not a problem at this point. Sales activity has bounced up quite a bit, but one thing I noted, and this speaks to the point I made before about how it's not just a dollars and cents thing, how we value our downtown. It's about 10% of our citywide sales activity comes from the downtown. And I can tell you the most emblematic point is I had no idea about that until I thought to look it up a few days ago. I can assure you that we don't take that number and assume, okay, well, downtown's about 10% of our workload or 10% of our priorities. It doesn't translate to dollars in the same way, and it is really, really important. But not in the same way it might have been 50, 60 years ago when everybody came downtown to shop. We're just in a different climate. New construction is certainly back, and I'll show a few projects real quickly going through this just to give you a sense of what's happening in that regard. And housing is back. Steve mentioned this before. I think he said, I didn't know the number. The Bay Area is 75,000 units, give or take, short on what we really need right now. The way I know that is the phone rings every day, and we have housing developers who are looking for sites. There's a lot of money to be made in housing, and it's not necessarily my job to help those developers make a profit, but that tells me something when that demand is there. We're a largely built-out city, as you are, and there's huge demand for housing, and it's incumbent on us to think responsibly, where is that housing going to go? How's it going to be built in a smart way that supports community goals, doesn't overly burden traffic, is responsible when it comes to climate change, for instance? How do we tie that to transit? Where we put housing, which historically wasn't really what we thought about in economic development. We have other people at City Hall who deal with housing. It's really, really important, and it all ties together. And with that in mind, mixed use. Not that long ago, mixed use was everybody's favorite buzzword, and it meant retail on the ground level and housing on top. That's a nice form, that's great when it works, but really what mixed use means to us at this point is having a mix of uses within a walkable region, within our downtown, where people have the opportunity to live, work, eat, shop, all in one place without having to get in the car and create traffic and create air pollution and decrease quality of life. That's really what we mean by having a balance of uses in our downtown. A couple other things. Restaurants are huge. You've heard Marcus alluded to this. We all know the internet is taking sales away from a lot of things, but not dining. Restaurants are really important for a place that we want to go and we want to spend time. And as internet sales take away from other types of retail, they just get that much more important in defining the success of our downtown. Even before the internet, I remember, I don't know if it's true, the economists might prove me wrong, I heard that in the US we have 5 times the square footage, the retail space per capita as they do in Europe. And I believe it based on my travels. So even before the internet started to take hold, you can make an argument that we're way over retailed in this country. I heard at a conference once, I think John was there, we're not over retailed, we're under demolished is what somebody said. That's pretty bleak, but it's worth keeping in mind as we embark on planning processes in San Leandro and in San Mateo. Not all of our retail is viable for the future. Some of it makes sense in today's climate, and some of our retail space is dated and maybe doesn't, and that's a tough thing to wrestle with. But some of it works and some of it doesn't, and that's part of the process. Restaurants, however, everybody wants them. We always want more, and I don't see that one changing. And lastly, everything comes down to parking. None of us got into economic development because we wanted to work on parking strategies or parking studies, but every single project comes down to that. And we work really hard to make our projects transit-oriented, and I'll talk about that. And have a variety of transportation options to people, but anytime you build anything, I'm telling you, parking is significant, and I don't see that changing in the short term. So certainly just something to keep in mind as we strategize about what's coming in the future. I'll just show quickly a few projects that have come in to give you a sense of what is happening in San Leandro and what we've been focusing on. First is a new retail center called The Village that is the first new retail construction that's been built in well over a decade in the city. So that in itself is significant. The anchor is a CVS, which nobody gives you a medal as an economic development professional for getting a center with a CVS. And that's no, hopefully they're not here. And so we took some criticism from the community. This comes back to dealing with economic realities though. If we wanted some restaurant uses, we've been trying to get a Pete's location in downtown San Leandro forever. And they're part of this project. If we wanted to get some of the uses that we really wanted, having an anchor that made sense economically and that had parking compatibility with those other uses actually turned out to be really critical. And the other point I'd make on that is that a lot of real estate transactions are really dominoes. We tend to look at it as one piece of property. What are we going to put? What do we want here? What are we going to put here? Let's build it. Really, every property action triggers something on other properties. In this case, we had a CVS in another location, ground zero in our downtown, a very old building, totally car focused. And by getting them into this new center, which is a great looking property, it's a very successful store, we opened up another site for development. So sometimes what you do on one site triggers all sorts of really significant things elsewhere. Another thing I'll note here is twisting some arms of developers is really important to get what you want as a community. This was the site of an abandoned Albertsons grocery store before this was built, sitting way back behind a sea of parking. That wasn't the vision we had for our downtown. So we made sure that the developer was very willing and a really good partner to work with on this. We got the building up to the street, so it feels like a vibrant, walkable place. And we added 2 separate public plazas where people could gather and spend time here. So this was an opportunity to get some really important things for the downtown. And it started to trigger other things. Chipotle took a 10-year vacant former coffee store across the street. Suddenly when this project went in, other things start to happen, and they did an incredible architecture job, and suddenly we have an eyesore turned into another good asset for the community. Right next to our BART station, I mentioned we need a mix of uses. Office has been huge. This is just started digging about 2 weeks ago. 450,000 square feet of office, allowing us to keep a software company in town and attract, for sure, some great office users in the future, which means more people walking around our downtown with money to spend to support things like restaurants. This also is consistent with our vision to keep development as close as possible. What you can just kind of see behind that black car on the left is our BART station. This is right next to the downtown BART station. And we're really determined to keep development as dense as possible around that station to limit traffic, to limit parking requirements, to limit air pollution. So that's a key part of our strategy. Right on the other side of the BART project is housing. And this is an affordable housing project done by Bridge, a beautiful project, much needed family housing. Affordable housing is a hot topic for all communities, and I won't try to delve into that at this point. But again, it's getting high density units right near our BART station, getting high quality construction, getting great architecture and design, and having that mix of uses so people can work, live, shop, dine, and get to transit and get out of town when they need to, all within one pretty tightly held ring in our downtown. I'll talk a few at that point. Those are just 3 projects we've done. I just want to talk about a few tools then that we've used to implement this. And this is the big one. We did a transit-oriented development strategy in 2007, and I think that's a process that's somewhat parallel to what San Mateo is embarking on at this point. And this was far-reaching, a really big effort. We changed the zoning. How can we increase density downtown so we've got people being able to, with high density, be able to get to work, get to their homes on transit, and again, trying to reduce the impact of the automobile in our downtown. This included design guidelines. We put some controls on how things look. We want things to look good. Obviously, we want things to look consistent and compatible. And this process already also included, and David mentioned this in San Bruno as well, environmental clearance for a few thousand housing units, over 1 million square feet of office use, an awful lot of retail. by doing the environmental impact report up front as part of that planning effort, we were able to get a lot of that work out of the way for developers, which clears the path to get the kind of development we want built quickly. This was a huge effort for the community. 2007, immediately thereafter, the bottom fell out of the economy. So we're stuck with this thing sitting on the shelf for a long time, worrying that is this just another study that isn't going to drive anything. Suddenly, about 2 years ago, the economy starts roaring back, and all of the projects I just saw you are consistent with this study. Suddenly, what we did in that effort is really significant. So these are obviously long-term efforts that stick with us for a long time, and sometimes take a long time to bear fruit. A couple other things, like many communities, we had a redevelopment agency that was pouring money into our downtown, supporting additional security, marketing, working with property owners, throwing a bunch of money at property owners to make facade improvements. The great state of California and their wisdom took that tool away from us a few years ago. And boom, suddenly the city wasn't able to do an awful lot of things that we used to do before. One response to that was to partner with our property owners downtown, and a community benefit district is essentially a tool wherein they agree to tax themselves. They pay an assessment on their property tax bill every year, and this generates just about $400,000 annually, and that'll go up as new projects are built. Really with a focus on security, on maintenance and basic cleanliness, and marketing and events. We have a great merchant organization in our downtown, and this gives them some resources where the city may not have them anymore, to bring activity and to bring events downtown. So this is really a financial tool, but it's been very important, and we talk about partnering with the private sector. This is something that cities just aren't going to be able to invest in the way that they maybe could a couple decades ago or more recently. And it's a great tool to make things happen. And I'll just show one more. This is small ticket on the cost item, but it's been really fun and I think really important to bringing some change to our downtown is art. You can see on the top, we've been wrapping utility boxes. Lots of cities are doing this. Really easy way to get the community engaged, to work with artists, and bring these little bursts of color. It seems like such a minor thing, but it makes a huge difference. I notice these things every time I drive by. I don't get used to them, and people love it. It's something I would urge you to consider. As you think about downtown, we get fixated on these big economic things for good reason, but sometimes little investments can go a long way. And the last one on the bottom, one of my favorite projects I'd worked on a few years ago, our city manager walked into my office and threw the Sunday Chronicle on my desk and said he'd seen this mural by a Portuguese artist of monarch butterflies. San Leandro is a community founded by Portuguese immigrants, still is a large Portuguese community. We have a natural habitat, an active habitat for monarch butterflies. This thing had been designed in San Francisco and somehow it fell through and wasn't going to get built, this mural. So our city manager showed up and said, get this in San Leandro. And it wasn't that easy, but we got it. And this view is actually taken from the BART station. So as people go through, we have lots of people that just fly through the city every day going to work. This is a piece of marketing, really. It's of great benefit to the community, but it's also a way to let people know where we are and see something really noticeable coming through the city. So art is not that expensive in the grand scheme of things, but a lot of bang for the buck, so I'd urge you to consider that as you go forward too. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sean Brooks. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to really talk about Redwood City and some of the really dynamic projects that we have going on right now. I do apologize. I'm just recovering from a little cold, so I may run and cough a little bit or sip some water because my voice may not be as strong, but I'll try to give you as much as I can over this next few minutes or so. Essentially right here, the feature slide really showcases some of the projects that we have going on. The storyboard that you'll see later on will also showcase these as well. But essentially, our downtown precise plan has really kicked off a lot of development. So I'll give you a brief overview of our current market in downtown Redwood City and really show you a lot of pictures. I feel that people are engaged when they see a lot of pictures and animation. So here we go. The first slide, really talking about some of the socio-economics within the city of Redwood City. Essentially, we're a city of approximately now 80,000 in terms of population. Average income, household income is around 76,000 or so. So the housing prices have risen, but we see that actually the wages have not kept up with housing. So that creates another need, which we'll talk about later in terms of affordable housing. But office rents are off the charts, as you can see. And so our overall approach as a city is really to be business friendly. So we like to say that Redwood City is open for business. And with that though, we reached a point where now with new developments, we're really focusing on community benefits. So as we grow, we want the development community to grow with us. So we'll talk a little bit about that in terms of the community benefits that we're looking for as we bring projects forward. Next slide, we'll talk about some of the current trends that we're seeing in terms of just overall demographics. Many people are talking about the Generation Y right now, and so they're driving a lot of the retail demand, and some of the characteristics about them, of course, they care about people, experiences as well. A lot of this could be likened to some of the baby boomers as well, and so they like to go out to eat. And we've already touched upon, Steve as well as Jeff have touched upon just the changing landscape of retail. People are buying more things online. So a lot of the new businesses that you're seeing are food-centric or food-related. So this group, as well as other groups in the population, love to rally around food. We're seeing a lot of the new businesses within downtowns really being more food-centric. So as we design communities, we're designing communities that include more of a gathering space, more public open space in order to really cater towards the needs of this changing demographic. So socialization around food is critical, and so future designs of communities will be predicated around focusing on this area. In terms of what's happening in Redwood City right now, if you've had the chance to drive the community, you can see all the cranes in construction. We like to say that our new bird is the crane. So at one point in time, there were 6 cranes in operation in downtown Redwood City. And all of this was triggered by the Downtown Precise Plan. The slide is a little dated, but essentially that plan calls for a cap of 2,500 housing units, 500,000 square feet of office space, and 100,000 square feet of retail space. And so we're pretty much bumping up against that cap from an office perspective, and we'll pretty much get close to that cap pretty soon from a housing perspective. So what that plan has done is really provide what developers are looking for, time and certainty, and it's been received very well. And so we are ecstatic about what we're seeing in the market right now. When we look at all the projects that have taken place, that future slide, these are the particular areas in town. A lot of it is taking place close to the Cal train station, bordered by Veterans, El Camino, Maple, as well as Brewster to the north. So we could not be happier. Wanted to show some of the completed projects that have really kind of come online at the proper time based on our planning tools that we developed a few years ago. The Sierras Regis project here at 333 Main Street, it delivered in March 2014. It has since been sold to a REIT at a great price, so Sierras Regis did a fantastic job with that project. But the key component here right now to focus on is that it's 100% lease. So we know that the housing market is very tight in the peninsula, and so anything that's new right now is just being gobbled up very quickly. Same thing with the second project here, Rain Tree Partners, 201 Marshall, right adjacent to the Caltrain line. This was completed in June 2014. It's also 100% leased. The interesting thing about these new projects or products, the weighted average rents are $375 a foot, so they've exceeded the developer's expectation. So performers are looking pretty good for projects that were developed starting in the 2012-2013 timeframe. Also with our Downtown Precise Plan planning tool, because there was certainty, because council created the vision, stuck to it, some projects were entitled or approved from submittal to entitlements in as little as 91 days. And so that's really driven the market, and so we've been able to capitalize on a great planning tool and a great market. So it's kind of been a nice nexus to come together all at once. Another housing project, you might be familiar with this, is the former Dodge dealership on Veterans Boulevard right off the 101. BRE has 264 units, and this is 97% leased as well. Really though, what our trademark project is currently in downtown that you've seen come out of the ground in the last 18 months or so is really a project by Hunter Storm and Kilroy, 300,000 square feet of office space right on the corner of Jefferson and Middlefield, better known as Crossing 900. Box Inc. Signed a lease, a 12-year lease to occupy that building once it's completed and ready to go, which will be October of this year. They signed the lease over a year, back in September of last year, so it was pre-leased. The developer went in spec, but it was leased, a year into the project, and so we look forward to welcoming Box and their 1,500 employees at build-out, or once they ramp up as well as they would like to ramp up. And Box just went public back in early January as well. So this has been a project that has really triggered a lot more development, and all the restaurants downtown as well as businesses are looking to benefit from us creating more daytime foot traffic. This project was also awarded by the SF Business Times the Office Suburban Lease of the Year last Thursday. So we're excited about this project as well as about Box. In terms of lessons learned, right? What have we learned from this engagement with our Downtown Precise Plan and all the development activity? One, we're able to leverage, right? You can stimulate private investment with public investment. So what the city did, which was very strategic years ago, probably in the mid-2000s, we decided that we wanted to redevelop downtown and Courthouse Square. So in the good days of redevelopment, we had $64 million in order to knock down that existing public building and really open up the space and activate the space right here. So it's known as the city's living room. If anyone's been to downtown Redwood City on a summer night, in the summer months, on a summer Friday night in the summer months, you can see that our summer concerts draw somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 people each Friday night. So this has been a great activity node and booster in terms of driving foot traffic in downtown on a Friday night, which is spurred over to other nights. So with that, then, we were also able to leverage that for private investment. Blake Hunt Ventures developed this project, Century Theater, which is anchored by Century Theaters in the mid-2000s, 20-screen theater development as well as restaurants. And from what I understand, this is one of the higher performing theaters within the Century chain. So we're excited about that as well. One of the other lessons learned, which is what San Mateo is doing tonight, get public input before development is proposed. A lot of people have a lot of opinions, such as these cows right here, right? So no noisy lawnmowers, no barking dogs, no loudmouth humans. So you take into account what everyone wants to see, you hear from them, and then you try to put together an effective plan that addresses what the community wants. And so that makes it more effective when you get feedback. And so that's what we did. So the Downtown Precise Plan, it was nearly 9 years of work to really make this come to fruition. The great thing about it is that it came on board at just the right time when the market was taking off. But through several meetings, through appeals, it was finally approved in January 2011. And so one of the other lessons learned is when you create good plans and codes, and then development follows. As they say, if you build it, they will come. And so this is the code of their plan that really has sparked development within downtown Redwood City. It's our Downtown Precise Plan, which provides defined development regulations and time and certainty, which is what developers are looking for. It's not an easy plan to get through, but if you hit the mark on all the standards, that you have a great opportunity of having the project approved and moving forward. In terms of other opportunities that we're seeing right now, the Crossing 900 project is pretty much almost completed the shell or the outside of it. Within that building, there's also an opportunity for another 5,000 square feet of retail. We've seen a strong interest in office and housing, and what we're hoping for next will be the retail to follow. And so that's what we're aiming at doing in our next round of development. Also, 601 Marshall, this is a proposed office development, and this will also include 5,200 square feet of retail, and that's going to be on the corner of Marshall and Jefferson as well. And then the Inner Harbor Precise Plan, which really seeks to address the city's waterfront edge. There's 100 acres that is available in terms of, that the city's going through right now, in terms of creating a specific plan, which encompasses the former Malibu Grand Prix site, the county jail, and the waterfront edge, just the east of the 101. One of the other tools that we've seen, though, is that private property owners have stepped up and joined the city with our investment. As Jeff alluded to earlier, we also went through a process of formulating a community benefit improvement district, which essentially is a business improvement district. And that actually went through a process for over a year, and downtown property owners also voted to assess themselves to provide a special benefit or enhanced services. And some of those things that will happen in downtown Redwood City is really a level of cleanliness. One of the needs there was that our downtown property owners wanted to see more street cleaning, more street sweeping, things of that magnitude, as well as marketing. And so you look to see, as we grow, our downtown improvement district will grow with us, and we're looking at enhanced landscaping, enhancement of public space as well. And so it's an exciting time to be in downtown Redwood City. One of the other things that comes with development, though, is that we have residents that are now asking, what's in it for me? I've been living here in Redwood City for 30 years, or maybe even 5 years. All this development is going up, and what does Joe Smith get out of this development? And so we went back to the drawing board, and now we're creating what's called a community benefits program. Not to be confused with the Community Benefits Improvement District, because that's a business improvement district. But basically, it's a process to really address what the community needs. And as future development comes online, how can we provide the community with what they want? And so last summer, early fall, we went out to the community and we identified benefits that were desired by the community. We conducted economic research to see what would be likely to be able to ask a developer for in terms of community benefits. And now we're in the process of creating a program that delivers those specific benefits. And so with that community outreach, we've had council meetings, community workshops, a planning commission hearing, an online survey. And then the results of all that outreach has really identified what's really on the mind of the community. We've talked about it for years and years, and it will always probably be a topic. The number one thing is that what the community wants to see is affordable housing. Outside of that is public art. So we've actually put together some mural art program as well. And then skipping down to parks, open space. So now we're in the process right now where we're packaging up a program to be able to formalize. And so council's on board with kind of these priorities, and so we're working through that. And really, we listen to the community, and now what we're doing is really trying to bring forward what the community wants to see from a community benefits perspective. In terms of things that we need to know or that we've learned, there's still future opportunities with the Inner Harbor Precise Plan. The Downtown Precise Plan is nearly capped out, but there is opportunity still for retail as well as hospitality usages. So we'd like to see another hotel. And lastly, we'll continue to work on our community benefits, our partnership with Redwood City, and continue to listen to our residents and try to provide them with some of the things that they would like to see in order to make Redwood City the best in the community. Thank you for your time.
Well, great. Once again, thanks to everyone here. As you know, this is just the beginning of our process here. We're way early in the process, but just stay engaged through our website. All of our information is back in the corner there. You want to be engaged. You want to learn from these practices, what works, what doesn't work for San Mateo as we continue on. So if that's it, thank you so much again. Thank you for coming, and see you next time.